we are dealing with the topic of international competitive advantage. And just a recap of what we did in the previous class, we defined what is the goal of international strategy, and that we identified is to take competitive advantage and have higher rates of profit other than our competitors, or rather, as compared to our competitors. And international strategy is all about making choices, about using our resources in the most prudent manner, and at the same time responding to the external environment, the threats, and the opportunity. And that is what was the traditional model of strategic management. But then in the current situation, we talk of strategic intent, which is going beyond the concept of objectives. And here, this concept of strategic intent was popularized by Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad, who is one of the well known management philosophers. Of course, he is no more with us, but C.K. Prahalad has immense contribution. He has also written a book about the bottom of the pyramid, which is about the people who are not even able to earn $4 per day for the purpose of managing their life. So, strategic intent, as we defined last time, goes beyond the belief of the future, and it is all about going beyond your resources, trying to capitalize your resources in a way that we have to see the capabilities as not a constraint, but something that can be created and molded in a very, very creative manner. And we need to take advantage, we need to leverage our resources in a way that we are able to constructively stretch it to meet the aspirations beyond our vision. So we identified that when you look at the resource-based view of the organization given by some of the management gurus such as Rumelt and Barney, it is about creating value for the customer. And we also discuss about the VRIO framework, where it says, where it defines that the core competency of a company is nothing but the way our resources are organized and our capabilities bundled, that finally results into something which is rare, which is value for money, and which cannot be imitated in the short run by our competitors, and are organized in a way that the company can fully exploit the resources and the creative bundling of the resources, resulting into our capability, and again the management of the resources and capability in a way that others cannot match or imitate it. That is the concept of the core competency. So this is what we discussed in the previous class. We also see, as you can see over here, we also talked about the platform strategy and how it has become one of the important aspect of the strategic management. The global companies such as Uber and including the retail companies such as Amazon, how they are taking advantage of the platform business strategy to create a unique position in the global market. And we saw that how connection, gravity, and flow ensures the success of a platform strategy. We also saw some example. We also saw the video of China's Ping An and how it has moved from being a insurance company to a company which even goes and creates a platform for the interaction of the patient and doctors. So this is what we saw in the previous class. We also had a look at some of the unique ways to get engaged with the customer. One was the Coca-Cola's example, where they printed name of their consumers on their can, and also the case of Nutella. And Today, we are going to talk further about strategy. We will go into details of strategy formulation, implementation, and control, and how it plays a significant role in creating the competitive advantage for the global firm. So, recall the framework that we studied in the first unit, in the first chapter, which was about the components of global strategy. And you will be able to recall that we start with the identification and articulation of companies' global ambition, whether they are interested to invest in key markets or they are only looking for some outsourcing centers in terms of using them as input for their sales in the domestic market. Similarly, we also saw the aspect of the value proposition for the consumers and how companies create the value curve for their consumers, and accordingly they will develop their products, and they will decide whether these products have to be only served in a given market in the home turf, or they would like to offer it to different regional centers, or they would like to offer it as a global product which can be sold in all the markets in which they decided to operate. So we will take it further and we will talk about the global business system. If you recall, our previous discussion was all about investment in resources, assets, and creating competencies to create a global value chain. And in this chapter, or rather in this unit, we will also talk about the global capabilities through alliances and acquisition. We have already got some exposure to mergers and acquisition, and we will also shortly talk about the strategic alliance and the specific role that they play in the global strategy and creation of international competitive advantage. We will also talk about the fact that global organization in terms of structure and processes needs to coordinate in a manner that there is full realization of the global strategy. Now, before I actually go into details of the global strategy, let us understand this with respect to a specific example. Now, I have a question for you people. Can you identify, please unmute and answer, which are the major companies in the gaming business when it comes to the hardware for gaming? Which are the major companies which are into it? I'm sure you are young people and many of you must be into gaming. So do you have any idea about the gaming industry? Who are the major players in the gaming industry? I'm looking forward to your answer. Can you identify and name some of the major players?
Sony.
Yes, of course, that's the right answer. That's the answer that I was looking forward to. And who are their other competitors? Can you identify? Can anyone identify any of the other competitors? I'm sure you know about Xbox consoles. Yes or no? I'm still looking forward to your answer, response. Okay, so the point that I wanted to make was that companies like Sony have reinvented themselves to meet the changing aspirations and needs of the consumers. Because if you became static with respect to your product offerings, you cannot survive in this market, which is now in the stage of hyper competition. And the companies need to continuously come up with new sources of competitive advantage. They need to enter new products. So I'm going to give you an exposure to how Sony has become one of the key players in the global market. So I will give you a brief introduction to the way Sony has emerged as a global company. So this company started in 1953, and Mr. Akio Morita was the founder of the company. And he started a company whose name was Tokyo Tushin Kogyo KK, that is TTKKK. And then he visited United States of America, and there he brought the license. Remember the entry mode. So he got a license for a new electronic component, which was the transistor. And can anyone tell me who was the inventor of transistor? It was the Bell Lab in United States of America. So they got the license for this new technology, which is the transistor. And with this, they were able to develop a transistorized radio in 1955. And they also came up with a pocket size radio in 1957. Can you recall one of the major innovation by Sony, which is something very similar to what you do in iTunes? Can anyone recall one of the major inventions by Sony, which we used to carry in our pockets and which was mobile, but of course it was not the mobile handset device that we use these days? So think about it and answer me when you can. So when he visited United States of America, yes, that's right. Walkman is what I was looking forward to. Yes. So yeah. So Sony is a company which is known for its innovative products and its innovative R&D solutions. So when he visited United States of America, that time Mr. Akio Morita realized that United States of America is an important global market for his company. And so he realized that there is a need to market his products outside of Japan. That time it was only a Japanese company, and their target audience, their customer, was also the Japanese consumers. Okay, so in the first major decision that he took was to name his company as Sony, because he realized that he needs to have a name which will gel with United States of America's consumers. So in 1960, they started with their first office in America because they wanted to have a control of the exports and distribution of the products. Till then, they were only distributing, they were exporting their products from Japan. They were manufacturing in Japan and they were exporting to United States of America. And similarly, they also concluded distribution agreement in some of the other countries. Remember, we often talk about the triad market of Europe, America, and which is the third one? Japan itself. Okay, so we often talk about that. So they moved to United States of America and also to some of the other European countries. And by 1960s, they were exporting radios, magnetic tape, and black and white television set. And 50% of the revenue of the company came from the exports. So what is the relative importance that you give to the regions and countries in terms of sales and asset defines your global ambition. So right from the beginning, they were looking at the key markets in the global arena. In 1971, they came up with their first overseas plant, which was manufacturing color TV. And this plant obviously came up in United States of America. And then they also expanded their manufacturing operations in America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So by 1990, they had manufacturing operations in 17 countries. So this is again the global positioning, identifying the value proposition and choosing the countries accordingly. Please have a look at the global positioning, which is the second part of the global strategy formation. So they had manufacturing operations and they were selling outside United States of America and Japan to all the major countries. And how they were actually allocating the manufacturing. So they had moved. They had movie and TV studios in United States of America. They had component manufacturing units in Malaysia, Taiwan, Thailand, Korea, and Singapore. Basically, the Asian countries. And why? Because we offered the cost advantage, and then finished product assembly was undertaken in Europe, North America, Brazil, and Australia. And the other thing that you need to do if you want to be competitive, particularly in the technology space, is to have the R&D regional headquarters. And accordingly, outside Japan, they created R&D centers in West Germany, England, and Australia. Okay, so this is how they moved as per their global strategy. So part one, global ambition, and part two, global positioning. Positioning in terms of choice of countries with respect to marketing and production and assembly and the value proposition. Now we come to value proposition. In 1988, Sony's management team coined the term global localization. Global localization. This was the defining moment. The intention was to balance sales and production according to the respective weight of North America, Asia, and Europe. So they needed to coordinate. They realized that how they coordinate their value chain is going to be the key differentiators. And that is why they made product groups, and these product groups were in charge of developing the products, the new and innovative products. And they also set up regional groups, and these regional groups were in charge of the developing the markets. And the regional groups which identified the market that has to be served, and the product group which identified the value proposition and creating products meeting the value proposition of the consumer. Both of these, they started working in a coordinated fashion. Okay, so by 1999, 32% of Sony's revenues were generated in North America, 37% in Asia, and 25% in Europe. So this is how you develop and you become a global organization where much of your revenue is coming from your operations across the world rather than limiting to the home country. So this was just to give you an exposure, an example of how global strategy is formulated. We'll talk further about the resources, assets, and competencies, and about strategic alliance, and about the global organization as we deep further into the aspects of the global strategy. So we move to the next part, which is about Michael Porter's competitive advantage model. And this model is basically an answer to the question how a firm can achieve competitive advantage. So recall, we identified that in the traditional model of strategic management, we say that strategy formulation is a trade-off between the opportunities and the threats in the external environment and matching it with the internal strengths and weaknesses. So how the company is able to respond to the external changes determine the extent to which it will have a significant market position. But then it also is about developing inside, that is developing our core competency through the BRIO framework, and in the process coming up with unique competencies which cannot be matched by our competitors in the short run. Remember, in the long run, there is nothing that cannot be imitated, but therefore, it is important that we have the first mover advantage, and we basically move to develop innovative capabilities. And there are two basic types of competitive advantage strategies as given by Michael Porter. This is what we call as the competitive strategies of Michael Porter, and this is cost advantage and differentiation advantage. So competitive advantage creation through cost leadership and through differentiation. This we have already discussed in one of the earlier classes. But just to again give you a recap, we identified that there are certain sources of competitive advantage and they lie either in cost or differentiation. पूछा मेरी क्लास से दे कुछ इम्पोर्टेंट है तो मैसेज कर दीजिए. Yeah, so we were talking about the sources of competitive advantage. So cost and differentiation, these are the two sources of competitive advantage that we have seen. Then there is a scope. How broad is our market that we would like to serve? So either it is a given set of consumers or given set of countries, or it is about the global ambition where we are targeting all the key markets. So we say narrow when we are looking at some selected product, sorry, market segments and some selected countries. And we say our scope is broad when we are looking with, the major key markets across the world. So if our focus is on creating cost leadership and we are looking at narrow market, then we have the strategy of cost focus. When we are looking at the key markets, then it is about cost leadership. Similarly, when we are trying to differentiate our products, that is what is giving us the leverage in terms of the advantage vis-a-vis our competitors. If the focus is narrow, then we say it is a differentiation focus strategy that we are following. But if our ambition is to serve all the key markets, then we have the strategy that we call as differentiation. Now, what are the advantages and how we can actually develop the cost leadership strategy? So to be a lowest cost producer, there are certain ways. One is what you can, of course, we have discussed many times the economies of scale of production and how we need to expand our capacity, and not only expand the capacity but also make use of the capacity. We need to have specialization, we need to have higher level of productivity, and we should be able to negotiate with our suppliers for all the production inputs. We need to make use of the contemporary operations philosophy of total quality management and lean and agile. We need to focus on just-in-time inventory. We need to focus on Six Sigma and ultimately reach the goal of zero defect. We need to make use of the latest technology. We are already in Industry 4.0 where we are trying to integrate artificial intelligence and robotics into our production process. And we can also have the cost leadership arising on account of the most effective distribution channel access. So these are some of the different ways through which we can economize and we can follow the cost leadership strategy. The other strategy is the differentiation strategy. Now, before we talk about the differentiation strategy, let us also remember that when it comes to cost leadership, it is easy for your competitors to come to your level and to reach your position. So it's not a feasible solution in the long run to carry on with the cost leadership strategy. So we need to reinvent in terms of either the production processes or in terms of the supply chain management. For example, if you recall, companies such as FedEx, they came up with e-commerce or rather the e-supply chain, and which gave them the competitive advantage which they are capitalizing on even at this point of time. So one has to be cautious with respect to the cost leadership strategy, and there is a risk involved, and I mean, there are disruptive innovations which may come up, and they can trigger a shift of the consumers. And I mean, one of the example is that of the Walmart. Walmart is a retail giant which had its headquarters in United States of America. So their core competency was to offer the everyday use products at the low price. But then once they had the competitors such as Amazon, which also followed suit, then it was no longer possible for them to compete at the same level. Amazon's is continuously improving the capability to offer the competing price of the different products, and there is a threat now to the sustainability of Walmart's cost leadership strategy. So this is something that you need to remember, and therefore the focus now is more on reinventing through differentiation strategy. And when we say differentiation, it means creating a unique position in the perceptual map of the consumer. So consumer should believe that there is a different value that is coming from a particular company, and that value is so unique and so important to the consumer that he or she would not like to go and buy the other products or services. So how this can be done? Not an easy job, but there are different methods. So you can bring, you can include, or you can actually create some features, some benefits, and some unique prepositions that create a superior product quality in the perception of the consumer. You create a product which is durable, which is reliable, and something that will create brand loyalty, brand recognition, a desire to own your product. Okay. Similarly, if you have industry-wise, industry-wide distribution across all major channels, so you create a unique value chain in terms of your the distribution system, in terms of your retail, that the product or the brand becomes an essential product to be stocked by retailers in a given industry. Of course, I mean, every retailer will define his or her product boundary. Okay. And then it can be followed up with a consistent promotional support. And these days most companies are making use of the social media, and using webinar, blog, and also you know the search engine optimization to ensure that their brand is coming up at the uh, in the initial search pages, and there is a recall value of their product. And companies such as Nike and Mercedes are the prime example of differentiation strategy. And in spite of so many competitors coming up like Adidas, Essex, Nike is able to maintain its leadership position. Same is the case with Mercedes. Mercedes, they have achieved economies of scale, so they could offer cost leadership, but then they relied on the differentiation strategy. They believe that they need to build their business and brands in terms of unique prestige for the product, and therefore with this prestige they are able to charge a premium for their products. So this was just to give you an introduction about the global competitive advantage, how differentiation and cost leadership are the prime ways to reach the consumers and serve their needs across the market. But I think it is equally important to understand the strategic management process, because so far you have not studied anything about it, because that will help you to do some of the case studies and the exercises which will follow. Remember, strategic management is going to be taught to you in the next semester, in the fourth semester. So this is something that I thought you should be able to follow before we actually get into the later part of the presentation. But here we will make some break and we will continue, of course, after a bit of discussion, and we will stop the recording at